Find the area of the region bounded by the x-axis, the vertical lines x equals 0 and x equals 1, and the curve given by y equals 1 plus x squared. So we want to use 8 rectangles using the midpoint sum. Okay, so let's draw out this graph here. Okay, now we know we're only in the first quadrant, so I'll just draw our graph here. Okay, and we have our graph, right? We'll just eyeball this, right? This is the graph 1 plus x squared, right? It's a U shape going up 1 unit, so we'll eyeball 1 about over here, right? Now the thing is, we want to break this down into 8 rectangles using the midpoint sum, okay? Remember, the midpoint means out of these 8 rectangles, right, the middle, or the exact middle of that rectangle, okay, must touch this graph here, okay? So we can do this a couple ways, right? First thing we'll do is we'll break this into 8 rectangles, right? So here's, of course, 1 divided by 8, that's 1/8. Okay, so here's going to be 1 over 8, and then 2 over 8, which is just 1/4. Okay, 3/8, 4/8, and so on and so forth. Okay, I sort of, didn't draw this to scale here, right? So we're going to have 8 of these guys. But let's take a look. More importantly, right? Remember, we're not going to use the right endpoint or the left endpoint. We're going to use the midpoint right here, right? So this rectangle should go like this. Okay? And similarly, the second rectangle should go here, right? So what does this exact point do, right? It's not 1/8. It's going to be the average of these two, right? So this point right here is going to be actually 1 over 16. Okay? What about this point? As we can see, it's not 1/8 and it's not 2/8, right? It's actually in between 1/8 and 2/8, right? So add them together to get 3/8, and then divide by 2, we get 3 over 16. Same thing here, right? So this rectangle, okay, the midpoint here, okay, is not 2/8, it's not 3/8, it's in between them, which is, well, 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 over 8, divide that by 2, we get 5 over 16. Okay. So hopefully you see that there's a pattern here, right? 1 over 16 is the first midpoint, and then 3 over 16, and then 5 over 16, and then 7 over 16, all the way up till 15 over 16, right? But you got to be very careful though, right? What is the width of each rectangle here? The width is 1/8, right? The width is 1/8. These are the values that we use to calculate this sum, right? So let's write that out, right? It's 1/8 times f of 1 over 16, okay? Plus 1/8 times f of 3 over 16. Okay, so remember, 1/8 is the width, and this function value of the x coordinate 1 over 16, right? So that's the first rectangle. And then the second rectangle has a width of 1/8. The function value here is 3 over 16, right? So we got to keep doing this 8 times, right? 5 over 16 plus 1/8 times f of 7 over 16 plus 1/8 times f of 9 over 16 plus 1/8 times f of 11 over 16 plus 1/8 times f of 13 over 16, and then plus 1/8 times f of 15 over 16, right? So remember, these points are the midpoint of each rectangle that we draw. 1/8 is the width of each rectangle, right? So width times length, right? Width times length. Okay? And of course, this is the function that we use, right? When we calculate each of these guys. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, we get 1/8 times f of 1 over 16. Well, plug in the 1 over 16 in here. Okay, so 1 over 16. 16 squared is just 256, right? So this is going to be 1 and 1 over 256. Okay, plus another 1/8 times 1 and 9 over 256. Okay, plus 1/8. And then put in the 5 over 16 here, right? That's 25 over 256 plus 1. So 1 and 25 over 256 plus 1/8. When you plug the 7 over 16 in here, we get 49 over 56. And remember, this 1 comes in because of this 1 right here. Okay. So yeah, you're going to have to use a calculator a lot for these guys, right? 1 and 81 over 256 plus 1/8 times 1 and 121 over 256 plus 1/8 times 1 and 169 over 256 And then finally, the last rectangle, right, 1/8 times 1 and 225 over 256. Okay, so we want to add all of these numbers, right? You're going to calculate these, right? 1 and 1 over 256 times 1/8 plus 1 and 9 over 56 times 1/8. Of course, there's little shortcuts we can use, but essentially, we want to calculate this sum. Okay, so if you do calculate this sum, right, and let's see, we get 341 over 256, so I did this ahead of time, right? And as a decimal, right, this is about 1.33203, right? If you round this to 2 decimal places, right, we'll calculate that as 1.33, right? So this is the approximation, right? So using the midpoint and using 8 rectangles, we got an approximation of 1.33.